You guys really don't know when it's good or bad when it comes right down to it. You really don't know because you don't know what we're trying to do. You guys don't look at the films. You don't know what happened. You really don't know. You think you know, but you don't know, and you never will.
To come home because I have a very special love.
The media public doesn't know. You guys don't know. Sometimes it won't. I can tell you it won't be good, and you'll see it won't be good. Sometimes you'll think it's good, and it isn't any good. Sometimes you'll think it's bad, and it was pretty darn good. Sometimes you'll think it's bad, and it was bad. But basically, you really don't know.
And the Beta Boys are back and better than ever. 2023. Going with the head Christensen for the moderator a little bit here, so young Griff can run the production board. We'll see how that goes, but a lot of demand out there clamoring to hear from the Beta Boys. So Schmitty, good to see you back. How's your summer going?
Oh, fantastic. If I can golf 95 times this summer, that's the mark. It's been a great summer so far. Just enjoying the great weather. This Midwest love affair with the weather that we get for 3.5 short months. I'm always a big fan of it.
The golf season in the North Country is to be revered. Revered, not just enjoyed, as in that of the Scottish shepherds. Sheep, herding their sheep and hitting that little feathery ball around the Scottish pasture. So get her done. We're happy to hear it, Schmitty. And I heard you got out there too, Griff. What's your deal with your summer here now? You're the big eye doctor now, and you got Lambo to take care of, a married man.
Yeah.
How you pulling it all together? You got the full catastrophe, as Zorba the Greek would say.
That's exactly what Dr. Graham Erickson said to me when I saw him out on the West Coast here. Full catastrophe. He had to educate me on that. So we got the mortgage too and the whole 9 yards. But no, things have been good here. We got out with Schmitty on the greens, and we're gonna do it again all together here. And speaking of the fourth member for our big Falcon shootout, as we got the scramble in a couple weeks here, Derek said he'd be up for joining the Packer pod too, so we might have to mix him in a bit.
Well, wasn't Derek integral in our pregame podcast that we had playoff time, if I'm not mistaken? Wasn't he with you, Schmitty? How did that?
He was, yes, we were. He might have brought us some good or bad luck. I'll let people chime in the comments, but yes, it would be great to get our friend Derek on the Beta Boys a little more frequently.
And Derek. Papa was pretty big
Papa
with his
and Derek, yes.
predictions.
Oh, yeah, we had a call in from Papa. And I think I misspoke. That wasn't a playoff. That was just a much ballyhooed anticipated playoff game that was going to definitely be when Aaron Rodgers led us into the never mind. That didn't happen, did it? Which probably leads us into some of the developments that have been going on in the offseason here. I think it'd be good to get let's get right down to the nitty gritty. And Schmitty, you're our resident kind of Aaron Rodgers apologist, which is good. We need that. We need some balance. And we love Aaron. We love Aaron for a lot of things, but there's been some strange stuff going on. What was your take on just the trade, how it went down, the value we got in the trade, kind of the transition moving on? I know you've had some sad feelings about that, but how's it all kind of settled out for you now?
Well, I mean, don't draft a quarterback in the first round after you just came off an NFC championship appearance and MVP performances. Don't do that, then that won't disgruntle your the best player of all time, transcending the sport of football. Had we not done that, maybe things go a little bit differently. But we did draft a quarterback, and so here we are. Aaron Rodgers is now part of the New York Jets. I was quite sad to see him go. He's a childhood figure of mine, and I enjoyed watching him play. Brought a lot of great memories, some good, some bad. But just knowing that you had him on your team, that you always had a chance. And so it was really, really sad to see him go. However, we move on. We have number 10. I think our friend Griffey's already has bought some merchandise of this guy. He was done literally nothing for the franchise yet. Glad to see it. Glad to see you supporting the Packers, Griffey. But we got a good deal. We got a good shake of it. What really we're going to get another first round pick next year. Maybe we can put together 7 or 8 wins, and you get to build on because Aaron gave you a lot more value than you probably should have gotten in the trade. So we can be happy. I think both sides, both the Aaron Rodgers truth, the lovers and the haters at this point, I think everyone can be happy, find some happy piece to this.
Well, this is
thank you, Schmitty, for weighing in. We're going to go to Griff, but this is going to be very difficult for me to be the moderator because it's hard not to remind the fans who the real best player in the history of the franchise is when it comes to playoffs and pass percentage and so on and so forth. But let's not get into that. I'm the moderator. We got to move over to Griff. Would you please give us your feelings? I think we know where you stand
well,
with
I don't think you
Mr.
need to
Love.
be bashful about sharing your opinions. I certainly wasn't last year,
It's
so
gonna
we can take
happen.
turns if need be. We see at the bottom of our screen here, number 10 for real. And this is year 3 of Jordan Love being the logo of the podcast, actually. So you can see that I've been ready for this transition to happen. I got to ask you a quick question, Schmitty, before I give my full answer. In terms of how you evaluate the quarterbacks we've had in our lifetimes here, who did you have more fun watching, you think, Brett or Aaron?
I think it's just a time piece to it. Like, just got to watch Aaron play a lot more, right? Like you and I we're just getting out of diapers for those Super Bowls in the 90s. So literally being able to grow up with Aaron, I think that was much more enjoyable for me.
Okay, I think that's part of our divergence here. Aaron was incredible, and we were awfully lucky to have him. But in terms of enjoyment, sheer enjoyment watching the game of football, I enjoyed Brett so much more than the Aaron Rodgers tenure. It also made you want to pull your hair out probably more frequently too, because Brett was right up there for some of the worst throws and decisions in NFL history. That said, Aaron, what an incredible talent and ambassador for the franchise for a long time. And then the wheels kind of fell off after the draft pick to some degree, but especially this season. Now, as long as he doesn't, go full Brett and join the Minnesota Vikings, I think we'll have a pretty easy time welcoming him back at some point here as well. In terms of compensation for what we got, I think we robbed the New York Jets blind. We are gonna get we moved up in the first round, of course. We'll see how Lucas Van Ness plays out. That could be significant. We also saw that I think that the Jets likely missed out on one of the tackles they were hoping for there because of that transition. And then we're going to get a first round pick next year, which, depending on how our boy Jordan Love does, might be very consequential in us drafting the future quarterback of the franchise. I'm certainly hoping that that's not the case, that we already have the quarterback, but I think Goody got extracted really good value and did it at the right time. He could have maybe tried and hold things past the draft, and that would have held up the franchise, but he stuck to his guns, and I feel like he got the better of Joe Douglas.
Well, I've got a lot to say about this topic, but I want to ease into it this way because we're going to come up on our agenda here and talk about the Matt Schneiderman article where looks to me like um, Brian Gutekunst is living rent free in Aaron Rodgers' mind. But we'll get into that here in just a minute. Just kind of, we need to come down off of this season, debrief what happened, get past all of that, because I must say, and I think Schmitty would agree, it really looked like things were shaping up for another amazing Aaron Rodgers comeback at the end of the year, run the table, sneak into the playoffs. And I think if Aaron had done that and won a playoff game, I think we probably wouldn't be talking about Jordan Love right now, but it didn't go that way. And so what was your guys' kind of post-mortem on all that? It was kind of a tough end of the season. How did you reconcile all that in your mind, Schmitty?
Well, I mean, I always expected him to come back or at least have the choice, right? He was going to decide whether what he wanted to do, and ultimately he decided he wanted to play for a different football team. Now he might have been forced in that direction, but I thought it's funny how quickly you lose one game, you lose that game against the Lions, and a lot of people were easily swayed to be like, all right, we can move on from Aaron. Really no feelings lost about doing so. But I always felt that he still gives most franchises, with the exception of a couple of quarterbacks, the best chance to win a football game. And so to move on from him, I wasn't that excited about that.
Well, I have to take a issue just a little bit with what you said there, Dad, in terms of if Aaron wins that game, that we're not talking about Jordan Love. I was talking about Jordan Love like week 4 last year. We have the tapes. I was ready to make the transition. So I think, regardless of how the season would have ended, and unless it was with a Lombardi trophy, I was going to have a bone or two to pick with Aaron Rodgers. Because if we would have won something significant last year, it would have been because the rest of the team dragged Aaron across the finish line. He didn't come through in a significant way in any game the whole season. He hardly had a game that you would even say was a good game for a whole year. And as a soon to be 39-year-old quarterback, there's just no doubt that the timing was right. And I think Gutekunst bent over backwards, as it sounds like in the offseason. As soon as Aaron walked out of the tunnel at Lambeau Field with his arm around Randall Cobb, I would have wished him goodbye. And Gutekunst was trying to connect with him the whole offseason and getting little to no response, it sounds like. And Aaron Rodgers is making jokes about FaceTime. And that just made the decision so easy as far as I'm concerned.
I think we're going to get into some of those details on the Matt Schneidman article, and we got some quotes here. But I would just say this, with all due respect, and I think it's Schmitty, probably represents a good segment of the fan base, and perhaps you and I are on the other side. I really made a kind of metamorphic change in my feeling about Aaron Rodgers, and we've talked about this before, but I would have bet every penny I could scrape together in the house and gone to my bank account and taken out everything I could in the fourth quarter when Aaron Rodgers had 3 chances to take the lead against Tom Brady, and his legacy would have been completely changed in terms of the narrative about his postseason success. And in 3 times in a row, he went 3 and out, and the Packers failed to take the lead in that game. He had a 4th chance to tie the game, and he did not take the opportunity to run the ball down near the goal line like John Elway did in the Super Bowl against us, that second Super Bowl with Brett Favre. And then following up on that, and then I just couldn't believe it. I would have, watching Aaron like you guys did all those years, I thought he was going to get that done for sure. When he needed 13 points to beat the San Francisco 49ers in the playoff game the next year, came up with nothing. Terrible in the second half. And then when he needed to beat the lowly Lions in a home game to get into the playoffs. So it was clear to me that we love Aaron and it was great, but he's not worth $50 million anymore. He's going to be done playing. He's 39, 40 years old. He's going to play a couple more years. I wish him well with the Jets. But I would submit that where would we be without Brian Gutekunst right now? We would be totally bereft of any plan. We wouldn't have a quarterback to try. Is Jordan Love for sure the answer? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like when you guys were young and Rodgers came on. I don't think Ted Thompson knew for sure, but I think the organization had a hint. I think they felt like they had something, or they would have taken Rodgers back. And I think, excuse me, Brett Favre back at that time. And I think they have an idea now. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. We can have some fun. Are we going to be a Super Bowl contender this year? No.
Yep.
Griff. Okay. This is where I'll differ with you. I'll be happy to challenge 500 and see if we got a shot to squeak in the playoffs at the end. But we got some young talent, so let's move on. We can kind of talk about that. Our next topic is maybe we should look a little bit at the draft picks that the Packers got this year and how you see that fitting together. Schmitty, we need some sanity. Griff thinks we're going to be Super Bowl contenders, and talk about the good and the bad with the team and the draft picks. How you see it all fitting together for 2023.
Well, you got a nice pick in Luke's Van Ness. You would imagine, just with how that D line situates for going to the season, he'll get quite a bit of playing time for being a rookie defensive lineman. And typically, those guys you don't start to see development until their second, third year. Think of like Kenny Clark, right? For a guy that's one of the premier guys at his position. It took him even a couple years to get his feet under him. So that might be a little more that might take a little more time, and people might not be so patient, but they definitely need to be. You got some nice pieces that you gave Jordan Love, right? So you're going into this new regime, this new quarterback taking the helm, and you added a bunch of nice picks around him. The wide receiver room is really young, might be the youngest in the league. That Luke Musgrave, he passes the shorts and t-shirt test. The guy looks like an absolute stud. So that might be something that we should all key in on. It's been it'll be really nice to have a dependable tight end, something maybe we haven't
Two
seen
of them.
since Michael Finley. Two of them, sure, Grippy. If we can get one of them, I would be ecstatic. Let's pump the brakes on Super Bowl aspirations. It is helpful that the betting world thinks that the lowly Detroit Lions are the favorite of our division. So who knows? We might get into a scrum towards the end of the year for the NFC title, and it might just be one team out of our division that makes it. I'm not saying that it can't be us right now. If you look across the NFC North, the Packers have some veterans. They have a defense that did not meet expectations last year, but if they meet expectations this year, which 1 year ahead, you get some better special teams play. It makes it a little bit easier on a quarterback that hasn't made a complete year worth of starts. So there is optimism. Uh, I'm not sold, Griffey. I know that you watching our game against the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, that has made you think that we're on our way, an ascending team to the Super Bowl. I'm a little more cautious than that.
Okay, Schmitty's laid it out there, Griff. I'm sure you have a retort. Let's stick a little bit with the draft element of this, and we're going to come back around at the end and kind of talk about way too early prognostications for the season. We'll
Well,
follow this up in the
I'll give
preseason when
just
we
a
get
little
to see.
teaser on
Yeah,
my thoughts
hit
about
us
the season,
hit
but
us with
then
the
we'll hit
draft.
into the draft too. My big
Yeah,
thing, the reason I have optimism is that very simply, I think we had an underachieving team last year, and I think that team could have accomplished more than they did, and we're better this year. And the reason we're better this year is in part because of this draft. It's the most excited I've ever been about a draft that I can ever remember. Additionally, we cleaved the albatross from around our neck that was Aaron Rodgers, and I think he was taking down the team in a number of ways, not just his performance, which was uh significantly below average in terms of next level metrics. I think Jordan Love can be average at sort of the QBR and the metrics that way, and it would be a significant boon to our performance and expected wins and so forth. So that's a big part of it too. In terms of the draft, I am absolutely over the moon about the potential of Jaden Reed. I think that guy is going to be our number one wide receiver for many years to come. I think he's going to be the reliable possession type guy. And this is before preseason, so I might change my tune. But I just like the skill set. I like the tape. And he's a bit of a went the opposite direction in terms of what Gutekunst has liked to do in previous receiver selections. He doesn't match the profile. He's not topping out on that raw athletic score. He's not very big. He's about 5'11", 190 pounds or something. He reminds me of, and I said this right after the draft, somewhat of a hybrid between Antonio Brown and Greg Jennings. So I think he can be a dependable possession type wide receiver that can win in the slot, win outside, and I think he's going to help Jordan Love for a long time to come. Additionally, you touched on the two tight ends there. Well, primarily Musgraves, who I'm ecstatic about. I think he's the best two-way tight end in the draft. You know, you had that Dalton Kincaid. That's going to be a nice fit for the Buffalo Bills, I think, but he's a little bit one-dimensional. There are a couple other tight ends that snuck in there ahead of Musgraves. Musgraves was limited in his participation in college due to injury, but I think he's a guy that could be he's maybe a little more athletic than George Kittle. He's got a profile kind of like Travis Kelce. But I think he can be similar to Kittle in the sense that he can be a factor in both the running and the passing games. That's what I'm hoping for, at least. And the same is maybe more of a bruiser and a rolling boulder. But Tucker Kraft as well, I think can be a factor in both the running and the pass game. So we're going to be highly versatile. I think, Dad, you're excited about the prospect of us lining both of those tight ends up there and coming out and play action. And how do you stop the run and the pass when we got versatile weapons like that, plus the running game that we have returning. So I'm excited about all that. I like a couple of the late picks we have too. You look at Dontavian Wicks, you look at Grant DeBose, and I'm a little bit skill player focused in my football analysis. I like watching the wide receivers and the guys making plays that way. But I think both of these guys, especially Grant DeBose, when you look at a 7th round draft pick, he just doesn't look like a 7th rounder when you watch him out there. So I don't know if he's going to be a contributor, but I think he's an above average guy than what you expect in the 7th round. And then we got a couple young guys coming back that I think we should be excited about too, that are going to be weapons for Jordan Love. You look at the speed we have in Samori Toure, or even a Bull Melton can fly. And of course, the guys from last year, Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson, are going to take steps forward. So I think there's a lot to like on offense. We've got 7 first-round picks on defense that are maturing and coming into their primes, a couple young guys still. The question mark on defense is Joe Barry the guy for us? And I think he got better towards the end of the year. I think his performance this year is likely to be a step up from last year. So all around, I see an opportunity for us to take strides forward, and we're in a weak division. So there's plenty to be optimistic about.
So getting a little ahead into the projections here now. I want to hear some thoughts about some of the other teams in the division and their draft. Specifically, I guess I'll just jump in here. I was totally perplexed to watch the Vikings at the 23rd pick with Will Levis on the board, who many were projecting to be a top 10 pick. And you could say kind of in a similar position to Brian Gutekunst, thinking ahead of the future at 6-year-old quarterback over there in Minnesota, 35, 36, with 1 year left on his contract. And they picked a 160-pound receiver for the slot instead of trying to prepare for the future. And it'll be interesting to follow Will Levis's evolution. Just be interested to see what you thought of. There were some interesting things Detroit did, especially in the first round. Schmitty, did you follow any of that?
Not necessarily Detroit. I will speak to some the Vikings decision. I really don't mind Kirk Cousins, and I don't think many, if you had him on your team, you would be all that worked up to have a guy potentially re-up on a contract for 2 to 3 more seasons. And so maybe that's a really telling sign with drafting the kid from USC. He is a slot wide receiver. He's a pretty damn good one. And so if you think that you're going to have, the best wide receiver, pair him with this kid in the slot, that you can have all you need is a serviceable quarterback. I don't mind the direction that the Vikings went into, especially if we find out maybe midway through the season that they extended Kirk for another 2 seasons.
If they do extend him for 2 seasons, it would be perfect for Will Levis to tutor under him for 3 years and be all set to go. The Vikings have not had a franchise quarterback that they drafted and developed since Tommy Kramer. and I thought it was an opportunity missed. But I guess the time will have to tell. Griff, what about that? What about that war room over there with Detroit going absolutely berserk, using a first round pick on what? A running back? Did you follow that, Griff?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised watching the draft live with you guys, right? But that was Kirk Herbstreit. Guy who watches a lot of college football. That was his best pick of the first round. So take that for what you will. He's all over this guy and thinks he's going to be an absolute weapon for the Detroit Lions. The thing that made me dislike it, to some regard, was they could have got him at 18 is my suspicion. There's people that are in the inside that say he was flying up draft boards and maybe wouldn't have lasted there. Tough to say for sure, but over the years, drafting running back in the first round hasn't returned commensurate value in recent years. Let's look at the New York Giants. You hit on an absolute stud like Saquon Barkley, and what has it brought them there? So I just don't know if that makes sense to put that sort of draft capital when you can oftentimes come around with a mid-round guy that's more than serviceable. That said, they liked the guy. They made their pick. They were jumping up and down, like you said. The other reason that I'm not huge on that draft pick, and I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I still believe in DeAndre Swift. He was hurt last year, and I think that guy's got some juice too. So maybe they just got to a point where the bridges were burned there. I don't know what sort of a guy he is in the locker room, but they were ready to move on apparently. The other guy they didn't bring back was Jamal Williams, and they traded the Bears running back David Montgomery in there. So I think they're going to have a productive backfield, but I think they could have had a productive backfield with Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift like they did last year, and they could have allocated that capital somewhere else is the biggest thing that I think they missed an opportunity with.
I would like to say thank you very much, Detroit Lions, for not drafting Lucas Van Ness, for letting him fall to us. And it will be very interesting to follow his career. If he turns out to be the real deal and they have a running back who has a nice 3 or 4 year career, we may have a lot to thank the Detroit Lions. It just seems like a very Detroit Lions like maneuver to me, and I guess we'll see where it goes. Let's move on to.
Well, I got one more thought on that too.
I wish you would.
As the Lions, who's in my opinion probably the greatest running back in the history of the NFL, Barry Sanders. How many playoff games did the Lions win with Barry Sanders? It's just not a necessity to win, especially in today's NFL. At the time Barry was playing, it was maybe even more valuable. So, I think I would have looked elsewhere personally.
I'll take it a step further. What round draft pick was Terrell Davis, who ran roughshod over the Packers in the second Super Bowl for Brett Favre and basically cost us the game?
7th.
I think it was the 6th.
I think you're right, actually.
Anyway, what round was Aaron Jones?
5.
5th.
The 5th. Thank you very much. Enough said. Case closed. Moving on to this Schneiderman article here. I got a quote for you guys that I want you to react to. Did Brian text me more than I texted him? Yeah, but did I ghost him? No, Roger said. I texted him back. There was back and forth that we had. So this is the story you want to go with? You're going to stand on this hill of austerity and say that arguably in the conversation of the best player in the history of the franchise, you're going to say that I couldn't get a hold of him and that's why we had to move on? Like, come on, man, just tell the truth. You wanted to move on. You didn't like the fact that we didn't communicate all the time. Like, listen, I talk to people that I like. Griff,
what
help me out.
Absolute madman. Well, first of all, what an idiot for even if this is all true and 100% how he felt, which clearly it is, wouldn't you have some self-awareness and be like, there's no reason to say this? Matt Schneidman, I heard him talking about this article that he put out there, and he called Aaron Rodgers because he felt they had an okay relationship when he was in Green Bay, and he wasn't really expecting to get a response back. And Aaron just opened up to him. Like, what in the world? It just didn't need to be said. But you're going to stand on this hill of austerity. At what point was Brian Gutekunst standing on a hill of austerity? I don't understand where he's getting that from. He's got a very distorted view of the world from what I can tell here. And that's not commensurate with winning football games. Schmitty, I say that we got the better of this trade with the Jets. The one thing I didn't like is the what are we at? 65% of games is what Aaron has to play. The biggest issue I have with it is if he doesn't play well enough, we might not get a first round pick.
Oh my God! If the 4-time MVP isn't going to play well enough, I'm gonna. If I could just reach through this damn screen and just wring your neck. Of course he's gonna play. He's gonna play the whole damn season. They wouldn't make that kind of investment
8
for
and
him
9
not
again,
to play
Schmitty?
football.
Can he get to 8 and 9 again?
God bless it. Of course he can. They got a more
Well, what
competent
happened
team
last
over
year?
there. That team isn't They got. It's a circus, and unfortunately, the zoo animals broke out. Aaron Rodgers couldn't tame everyone down, and so you got 8 and 9. That's unfortunate. The defense was lackluster at best, and you
If I
got to have some.
remember, Rodgers didn't show up for mini camp. He had a screwy hair. I might have to get my daughter's hair bun out again so we can redo the hair
I'm
thing.
not saying the
And now
relationship
he
between
shows
Aaron.
up in New York, all clean cut, looking like
Of
$1 million
course, of course.
shows up to mini camp, trying to build some rapport with his receivers.
You
Where
just-
the hell was all that last year?
You just got out of a toxic relationship. You're overweight. You hate your life, and then the next week you're like, all right, I'm going to get on the treadmill. I'm going to run a marathon in 2 weeks. Like that's where your mind goes. That's just human nature to do exactly what Aaron did. So to blame the guy, to throw stones, that's not right. He wasn't. It's a two-way deal, right? Like he had an issue with the franchise. They had an issue with him at the end. He got out of a bad deal, and he moved to what he believes is a better and greater thing for him in this time. And I firmly believe that that's what he did. And so maybe you do have a little more buy-in just because he feels that much better about himself.
To support Schmitty's point of view a little bit and maybe play devil's advocate, I have a tough time really fully giving Brian Gutekunst credit for the situation we found ourselves in this offseason. The fact that he drafted Jordan Love in the first place brought us to where we were to large extent. Now, he did try to undo that with the contract they had Rodgers sign. But I don't know if you can give credit to the guy for drafting Jordan Love and then saying, oh, look, we needed a quarterback. We knew this was going to happen, when clearly they didn't. They didn't know he was going to go win 2 MVPs, and they kind of provided a self-fulfilling prophecy. Do you have any pushback against that? Or Schmidt might agree with that, but
I have a pushback against that if I can chime in here. I think the seeds of this were sown even in LaFleur's first year. Rodgers' body language with Coach LaFleur was piss poor, pitiful. He did not respect LaFleur as a head coach. He treated him as an underling. You could see the disdain in his face, the flipping his hands at the coach, and when he didn't like a play. And the Packers said, "Hey, we got to start making preparations here if his play falls off." And I think we'll see. If Schmitty might be right if Jordan Love flops, but I think Goody did what he had to do, and he will rise or fall on how this works out with Jordan Love. If Jordan Love turns out to be the real deal, Goody will be hailed as a genius. And
Goody,
if it doesn't go well, then people will say, well, we should have kept Aaron around. But Aaron has shown me enough. He's still high on ayahuasca or something over there. I mean, okay, first of all, let's cover arguably greatest player in Packer history. How about 9-1 in the playoffs? How about 5-7 in championship games? How about 5 championships in 7 years? How about the highest pass percentage when he retired in the history of the NFL? He can't touch Bart Starr's jockstrap. And his record in the playoffs is 12. I wouldn't even go into this if he hadn't opened up this ridiculous psychotic vein saying, I don't talk to people I don't like. He's 12-10 in the playoffs. He's lost 4 NFC championships. He threw up all over himself against Tom Brady. He threw up against the 49ers, and he absolutely laid a turd against Detroit with the chance to go to the play. This parting was meant to be. It was time. It was time to move on. And you can call it Goody's fault or Aaron's fault. The Aaron was not the same. And I loved Aaron. I loved the Aaron who said in his first press conference when the press challenged him, how come you didn't do this and didn't do that? And he said, you know what? I have to get better. I don't know where that guy is anymore. He's now touting himself as the greatest player in history, and therefore everybody should roll out the red carpet. So we got 2 different opinions on this, and it's good because it represents the fan base. But he's going to be done, Schmitty, in 2 years. He's done. So move on and let the next quarterback get his reign in Green Bay. Okay, Schmitty, you get your equal time now before we move on to projections for next year.
The guy that went 7-1, 9-1, whatever, he was playing against the WIAA All-Stars and playing against guys that are ripping heaters and eating hot dogs at halftime. So just let's not get too worked up about a guy
then,
we're
buddy.
15.
You didn't see it.
All right.
Tom Landry was a pretty good coach.
Len Dawson was
Chuck
ripping
Noll,
heaters, can confirm.
Hank Stram. It was a good old-fashioned NFL, and it was a beautiful thing to watch. Well, you can say this. Pretty hard to argue with this, Schmitty. When Bart Starr was in his biggest games, he played his best. He has the second all-time passer rating in the playoffs only to one player. His passer rating in the playoffs is 104. Only Mr. Patrick Mahomes is better. So, and I don't mean to run Aaron down. I don't. I loved his career. I loved every minute of it. He's a hell of a player. I just think he's really tarnished himself, and he can recover from it, and I hope he does. I wished he would take some fatherly advice. I thought about this. I'm damn near old. I am old enough to be his father. Aaron, take a little humility. Realize you had a great run in Green Bay. The reality is you weren't worth $50 million in Green Bay anymore. You weren't getting it done. And so move on. We wish you well with the Jets. End up your career on a high note. We'll bring you back in 5 years when the Hall of Fame, have a big parade. But right now we move forward. Okay, so with that being said.
Quick question for you. One question.
Please.
Did we move on from Tom Brady or Peyton Manning? And we're going to see that sort of a performance and a new team from Aaron, or did we move on from Matt Ryan?
Or did we move on from Brett Favre, who had
that's the easy
nice
analogy.
Start with the Jets. I think he started 8-3 and ended up 8-8, and then had his best year of his career with the Vikings and beat us, and was revitalized, and it really had a nice couple of years after he left us. I don't doubt that, and I think Schmitty would agree with this, Aaron could be revitalized and have a good year. However, he's playing in a hell of a division and in a hell of a conference against some really good quarterbacks where it could go the other way too. They could just be, a so-so team that struggles to make the playoffs. I don't know. What do you think, Schmitty?
Oh, I mean, anytime you have a new quarterback and you just insert themselves, and like there's might be some growing pains, and there's a lot of hype. I mean, when you get Aaron Rodgers on your roster, people start looking around, the lights get a little bit brighter. So, I think both the Packers and the Jets temper expectations, right?
That's fair enough.
I let me lead into this kind of thinking about next year, pros and cons. I just a little grist for the mill. I like the notion of Jordan Love being the same age as these receivers that he's grown up with, being able to relate culturally, kind of age-wise, not having that separation, no funny hand signals that some other guys were supposed to know. Being there the whole time with them. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's necessarily Aaron's fault, but it's just the age difference and all the experiences he'd had and different ways that he had done it, I think led to a certain standoffishness there. Put it this way, Aaron did not elevate the play of those young guys around him last year. And we'll see if Jordan can do that. Maybe not necessarily next year elevate their play, but perhaps the following year. And so I think that's an intangible that will be interesting to look at, is between the scheme and these young guys growing up together, how will they relate to Jordan Love? What do you think, Griff?
Well, I saw Jordan Love elevate Christian Watson's play in about 30 seconds when he came into the Philadelphia Eagles game, hit him in stride, and something that Aaron had been unable to do to that point in the game. Although we were moving the ball with Aaron, to be fair.
First play of the game of the season.
Do you remember this?
Yeah, exactly right.
First
He
play
was
of the
licking
game
his
of the year.
lips.
We
Licking
didn't.
his lips, waiting for that.
We talk about the young
Process.
guys and Jordan Love relating to them. How about Jordan Love relating to an old guy and Tom Clements? How much that speaks volumes. The fact that Tom is back with Green Bay this year.
Yes.
He had every chance to ride into the sunset, or head to New York for that matter. But he chose to be back with a young guy in Jordan Love and wants to mold him in the way that he did a young Aaron Rodgers. And if he didn't see something special, there's no way in heck he would be back. It makes no sense. So I'm highly encouraged by that from a guy who's seen young guys take the next step before. And absolutely, Jordan. I mean, you see the photos of him partying out in Door County already with Christian Watson and Jonathan Owens and the mayor of Door County over there, AJ Dillon,
The
too.
gymnast.
So, yeah. So absolutely, Jordan Love is going to have a better. Well, he's going to be there. He was there in OTAs. He's going to have more synergy with these young guys. There's no doubt about it. Now, does that overcome it if he's just not wired heavy enough? No, of course not. But he's already got a better camaraderie and relationship with these guys than Aaron did.
Schmitty, as we're winding down now, give us a little counterbalance. Oh, where did Schmitty still there? You with us, Schmitty?
That must have been the straw that broke the camel's back for him.
That's it. That's enough. I will say this. We'll see if Schmitty comes back on the counterbalancing side. My concerns with the team are Joe Barry. He really concerned me took him 10 games to figure out that Jair Alexander should be matched up one-on-one with the other team's best player. So I hope he figures it out, and I hope he's the guy, but I won't be shocked at all if he isn't. And if he isn't, it speaks volumes to Matt LaFleur's judgment too. So there's some interesting things hanging in the balance there. Schmidt, you back with me? Can you hear me now?
I got you guys.
Why don't you chime in on your feelings about maybe the pros and cons about next year?
I lost the initial question. What pros and cons for next year?
Well, we were kind of talking about Jordan Love being able to relate to the young guys, being a positive, and then
certainly.
But there's certainly got to be some negatives. I mean, I didn't bring it up, but the kicker, it looks like we're going to have a young kicker.
And Joe Barry,
Barry's
mentioned
defense, other things like that are issues for concern that bring me to think a 500 season is probably a good expectation.
Sure. I mean, really, the pros is that you have a really great head coach, right? And you have a very impressionable team. You're probably one of the youngest rosters in the league, right? And you got some cornerstones on the roster that have done a lot of great things, both on the offense and defense side of the ball. And you got a lot of really good players that are up and coming that are still on rookie contracts. So the pros is that you got a great ball coach who can steer this in the right direction probably pretty quickly for the first few years of these young guys' career. The cons are just that you have a young team. You haven't seen much. You haven't played much meaningful football. Maybe you don't know the ins and outs of the league just yet. And those things, it seems like those take time. Like you have to, aside from just like putting a product out on the field, you have to be that professional in the league and really be charismatic about the work you put in off the field. And there's a lot of guys that maybe just haven't done that yet. And so you're hoping that they really take hold to what the veterans in the room do. And if they don't, they might not be around too long.
Gentlemen, it is absolutely a pleasure to have the Beta Boys riding the range again after this long hiatus. I think, Griff, we do have to pay some homage and hold Schmitty in high esteem because his record on prognosticating put us to shame last year. So I think Schmitty deserves the benefit of the doubt here. And I guess I got my tail between my leg. You didn't chime in on 2 games, or your record would have been the same as mine, I think. But anyway, we're hoping for a better one this year. I think we'll probably fire up the Beta Boys again here when we get into training camp. And I would just end with this. One of the things that gives me hope this year is our division. The Vikings have an absolutely terrible defense. It's probably gotten worse. It's going to take them some time to revive all that. The Detroit is Detroit. If that's the favorite in the division, then I think you always have a chance. So I'm hopeful we can be in the mix late in the season and see if we can see some excitement out of these young players and watch the guys develop. Any other last thoughts, guys, before we sign off?
Yeah, I want to shout out Kou Guy, loyal listener of the pod last year. If he makes it to this point here, shout out to Kou. We appreciate his viewership. He was giving us some hot takes to respond to in the comments.
I look forward to opening up the season. We're going to do a little Beta Boys mix. We're going to have some fans out, do a little tailgate early in the season. So more to come.
All right, boys. Thanks very much. We'll see you when the boys ride the range again. We're out for now. And his father shoveled horse shit all the days. When the lad was very young, they found a diamond in the dung, and they sent him off to college just to play. Hail, hail, hail to Master Beta, lift your thunder mugs on high, and we'll drink another glass to the biggest horse's ass in the brotherhood of Beta Theta Chi. Go Beta Boys!